Even before a child begins kindergarten, pressure is building for that child to learn to read. But there are so many questions that come to mind. How do I develop a reader? How do I know if my child is ready to begin reading? What books do I use to teach my child to read? And what if my child is struggling in this process? For the next several weeks, we're going to be looking deep into this process of teaching a child to read, and I'll be answering questions like these based on my experience in teaching my own children to read and in working with other kiddos. But did you realize that there are specific things you can do starting at birth with the child to help develop a love of books and then to give them a step ahead in reading? There are. And that's what we're going to talk about in today's live broadcast. I'm going to give you 8 little tips that you can start right now in your home to help your child love literature and books. First of all, is provide the child with a home library of quality, age-appropriate books. And what a home library does is it allows the child to have the repetition, the reading of the books over and over and over. Now, while that is incredibly boring for an adult, that repetition is how a child learns. I encourage you to create a little basket of age-appropriate books for the child so that he or she can grab those books whenever they want to, whether it's just to sit down and read by themselves and look at the pictures or to bring it to you and for you to read the books to the child. And don't forget to include a quality children's Bible in that mix. And then rotate these books every week or so that the child is looking at new books, and it's like Christmas morning when they get to look at what you've placed in their basket. Now, most professionals suggest that you read at least 15 minutes a day. And there's wonderful times to read, such as before bed or before nap, or while you're waiting in the car for pickup line at school, or you're waiting at the doctor. Use those times to be able to read to your child. Now, if you're a little overwhelmed with what books to choose, the ABC Jesus Loves Me curricula contains over 140 quality children's books to expose the child to vocabulary, popular characters, various plots, and social situations. And these are the best of the best books. These are the books that many people feel all children should read during their toddler and preschool ages. And you can find these books on the ABCJLM website. And then I also will have links for them included in this video. Now, if it's overwhelming to think about the cost of these books, I encourage you to share the list of books that we have suggested with family and friends. If your kiddos are like mine, we don't need any more toys. And this is a great opportunity to tell family and friends, hey, we don't need toys, but would you help us develop a home library for our kids? So I encourage you to share that list. Also look at thrift stores, garage sales, and some of your discount, like dollar stores, have books as well. So there's many opportunities to build your library. If you're interested in creating a home library and then figuring out how to organize the books, there's a YouTube video on that at youtube.com/ABCJesusLovesMe. So I encourage you to check that out. Okay, so we're going to work on creating a home library of quality books. But with that said, we know that most of us don't have the funds or the space to be able to create a home library with all the vast amount of books that are available. And that's why many towns include libraries. So my second suggestion is to visit your library. This increases a child's repertoire of literature. And then also the library oftentimes will have read-alouds or other programs available for the various ages. If your library does have a read-aloud time, a lot of times they will also include crafts and music and movement in those activities. And then it's also another opportunity for the child to learn how to sit quietly and listen to an adult as they lead. Okay, so we're going to provide a home library of quality books, and then we're going to expand the repertoire by visiting a local library. The next thing I want to talk about are word books. Now, when we first received these word books when Bubs was born, I really kind of thought they were pointless. But wow, I was so mistaken. These word books are so important for language and vocabulary development. And then because of their thick pages, because it's a board book, it allows for the child to practice fine motor as they're turning the pages. So there's lots of learning in these word books. But what I want to talk to you about today is how to use these word books to teach your child vocabulary. And we're going to use the ABCJesusLovesMe teaching style of introduce, recognize, and identify. So let me show you how I've used it with our kiddos. I'm going to go to the back, and we're going to look at the shapes page. Now you could use this for any page, but this is just to teach the child. So what we're going to do is we're going to introduce the different shapes for the child to learn. And I'm going to gently take the child's hand, and I'm going to point to the circle and say, circle, 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 and repeat that over and over. And then we're going to move to the next one and say, diamond, diamond. And it's going to be very repetitive for you, but remember, repetition is how a child learns. Pretty soon the child's going to start moving their hand around, and whatever they point to, that's what you're going to name several times. And sometimes they'll hold their hand on a picture for a long time and just keep repeating it because that's how they're learning. Then you'll see that the child will start turning the pages. And let them turn these pages, because remember, this is fine motor that they're doing this. So they might point to the horse, and then they jump over to the pig, and then they turn the page. And that's okay, because you're learning the objects, and they're looking for the ones that they really like to see. Second part of the learning then is where the child recognizes the object. And this is so key to learning. Do not skip over this second step. This is where, let's go back to the shape page. This is where you name the object and then the child points to it. So I would say, little man, point to the star. And he would point to the star. We are recognizing that he knows the name of this object, the star. And then I would say, point to the circle, and he would point to the circle. Now, if at any point he does not point to the right object, then I just gently take his hand and move him to the correct object and then say it several times. And I know I need to back up to the introduction teaching. Now, once the child is able to recognize the object, when I say point to the triangle and he points to the triangle, I know we're ready to move on to the next step. The next step is where the child identifies the item. So I would point to the star and ask the child, what is this? And if the child is able to say star several times in a row when we do this activity, then I know that learning has fully occurred. The next thing I want to talk about is when we introduce a new picture book. And this is called picture walking. And what that means is that we're going to walk through the pictures and kind of preview the story before we ever read any of the words. And what this does is it helps the child build interest in the story. It helps with comprehension. It develops imagination as the child is discussing with you, what do you think is going to happen in this book? And then it teaches the child to use visual cues as reading strategies. And although this is very important for preschoolers, using visual cues is essential for kiddos to learn how to read. Now, instead of going over how to picture walk, we have a YouTube video available. Again, youtube.com/ABCJesusLovesMe. You can look for the video beginning steps to reading how to picture walk through a book. And this is a fantastic way, as I said, to introduce a book. It's not something you're going to do every time you read the book, but to introduce it to the child. Now, here are some ideas for once you've read the book several times. And this is number 5 in our list of tips. We are going to further the learning while reading. So, to help with rhyming and comprehension, allow the child to participate as you read. And here are some ideas. First of all, have the child fill in keywords, especially the rhyming words. My kids love the book, Mr. Brown Can Moo, Can You? And in these places, there's lots of rhyming. And as we read it, they would memorize. So on this page, we can sound like rain. Dibble, 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 dop. And then they would say it with me. Dibble, 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 dop, dop, dop. Because they've memorized, and allow the child to say that with you. And wait for them on those words that rhyme. Here's another example. 5 little monkeys jumping on the bed. We all know the part where the doctor said. And the child will memorize that very soon. So the doctor said, no more monkeys jumping on the bed. So say that, the doctor said, and then wait and see if your child will start saying those phrases as you read the book over and over again. My children loved the book, Go Dog Go. And this was a great one because the pictures really explained what the words were. So it was a great one that the kids would pick up and they would read to me. And that's another way to further that learning. And you are teaching the child that the words and the pictures go along. Before you turn a page, it's always fun to let the child predict what they think is going to happen. Here's an example. You're almost there, stop at the tree, climb that ladder to, and ask the child, what do you think they're going to climb the ladder to? And then as they learn the book, you can stop and then they will answer a dog party. So these are ways to further that learning. And then for comprehension, I encourage you to ask questions as you read. Some of those questions could be, what do you think will happen next? How do you think this story is going to end? What was your favorite part? Did the ending surprise you? Who was your favorite character? And then this one's a higher level, but it's something that they will use in elementary school a lot. And that's where you ask them, what happened at the beginning, the middle, the end of the book? And then the last one is a comprehension. What was the problem in this story and how did the characters solve it? One of our favorites are Mr. Putter and Tabby books, and I highly encourage you to check these out at your library and gather them for your home library as well. But after you get done with this book, talk about how Mr. Putter and Tabby made a cake, and then ask the question, what was the problem when they were making the cake? In this book, the problem was Mr. Putter didn't have any baking supplies to make a cake for his friend, Mrs. Teaberry. And then talk about how did the characters solve? What did Mr. Putter do to be able to make this cake? The next one is teach phonetic sounds of each letter. Now, the 3-year-old curriculum on ABC Jesus Loves Me is where the child first begins to learn the phonetic sounds. For an example, A says a, as in apple. B says b, as in boat. And you're teaching that each letter has a sound. And this is key and core of teaching a child to read. Now, you'll notice in the ABCJLM curriculum that I only teach short vowel sounds. And that's because that's what a child first learns to read. And you can teach that so many ways. But use it as you are reading, in your daily activities, as you play. For example, have the child go get a book and say, book. Book begins with B. And so put it into their daily lives. Now, understand that it's probably not going to be immediately mastered as you teach this concept. It's going to take several months, maybe even a few years. All of my children went to kindergarten with just a couple letters that they did not know the phonetic sounds to, and that's okay. It would come with maturity. But I want to caution you on one thing when you're teaching them the phonetic sounds. Make sure you do not add a vowel sound to the end of consonants. Let me explain what I mean by that. So for the letter B, make sure that you only teach them the sound B. So it's just with your lips. It's B. Make sure that you don't teach them it's B, B. Hear the difference? B, B. The B is where we're adding that sound at the end. Now, for just learning the sounds, you may not hear a lot of difference, but when the child tries to add B to a vowel and a consonant to begin reading, compared to when a child has learned ba and then tries to add another vowel, it creates a lot of confusion. So be very careful with letters like H, B, K, D, and P, that you don't add that vowel sound afterward. Okay, 2 more. And this one is sometimes the hardest. And this is be an example to your kids. Let them see that you love reading. But it's sometimes hard because you have to sit down and actually take the time to read. But they're going to pick up on your attitude about reading. Read for fun. Enjoy reading with your kiddos. My kids are all grown and in school now, and we don't get that daily time. And I miss that time, so enjoy it. Enjoy sitting on the couch and reading with your child. Make it fun and enjoy the cuddles.